get up here and talk about my testimony. When Brian said he was going to use me as an example, I hadn't been made an example of in a good way. Usually when somebody says, hey, I'm going to make an example of you, probably like in school or something like that. But telling my story is kind of weird because I'm not a public speaker. I'm good in sales and I can talk one-on-one or I can joke, but to get up here and speak is a little, it's uncomfortable for me, definitely talking about stuff maybe some of you guys haven't heard. So I'm going to read this. Usually I try not to read, I try to speak and walk around like I'm a good speaker. But I grew up through foster care mainly my entire life. I was taken from my parents when I was probably 2 or 3. I put on here I wasn't going to cry until like later. But my parents, I first got taken when I got a call, or my parents got called on for a domestic violence dispute. And they said, hey, police need to go there. There's kids there. It's very toxic. So when the police got there, they couldn't find my brother and I. We were outside or something. I think they said we were scared. So when the police got there, they seen drugs and filth and whatever else. So we obviously went to foster care at that point. I was about 3 years old. We were all separated, so we all went to different places. And I got real bitter at a young age because I was the only one that went to foster care. All the relatives went to family members, and I couldn't comprehend that. I thought, I'm the baby, and I'm going to foster care. One brother went to my grandparents, one went to an aunt, and another went to another grandparent. So I really had a lot of bitterness towards my family because of that. Later on, my grandmother passed. My brother Kurt moved in with me. In the first foster home we went to, people said, man, there's good ones, there's bad ones. The first one we went to was terrible. We got there, and when we got in trouble, we got put in closets. So they would turn the lights out, and we didn't eat much. We would sit there for days in pitch dark, probably peed and pooped and whatever else, and it was bad. Let me get to my... So when we got moved from that foster home, I was probably, 4 or 5, and my brother and I, we just said, let's go on a walk, and we just started walking. We were on a main road, probably similar to Route 4, and a police officer sees this 4 and 5-year-old walking down the street, and he stopped us. He went back to the house. He seen that foster home was terrible. The son of the foster mom would put our food inside the closet and shut the door and laugh, and he was, I think they ended up going to jail. But we got moved from that foster home at that point, and I had a lot of successful family members actually. One of my uncles, my dad's brother, he was a lawyer right here in Dayton, and he didn't step up to help us at all. I had another uncle, he owns 7 bars, and he's pretty wealthy. He's got a house by Six Flags in Chicago. He didn't step up to help. My Aunt Tracy, my dad's sister, she was a single mom. She had 3 kids. She stepped up and took me and 2 of my brothers in. One brother stayed with my grandparents. And we lived at 5 Oaks. I don't know if you guys know 5 Oaks. 5 Oaks? It's like the hood. And we lived there. We were evicted from several different homes, and but she did the best she could. We stayed there for about 7 years with her, and then she put us back into foster care because her kids, they were having kids with whoever, they were stealing cars, they all had felonies on their record before they were 17. They were all tatted up. I could probably have a couple tats right here on my neck and whatever else, look real gangsters. But she put us in foster care at that point, and we were literally running the streets. I was probably 7 or 8, and I would get on the RTA bus at 7 or 8 years old. So I don't know if anybody knows anyone has a relative 7 or 8 years old, but just picture them catching an RTA bus. And we would go down to the BP gas station, and I would go up to people hey, can I pump your gas? And they're like, yeah. And they would throw me $1 or $2, and then I would go to the bus hub, and I'd put on my little puppy dog face. I don't know if you guys seen Life of Pets. that rabbit that looks all cute, and then it's like real gangster. So I would, you know, hey, I need $1 to get back home. And they're like, oh my gosh, here, dude, like here. And I would get all this money, and then we would go eat, and that's how we ate. And so like that helped me out later in life. I do door-to-door sales and telemarketing, so I was pretty good at not, you know. Anyways, so at that point, living with my aunt, my mom and dad would come see us here and there, and then you wouldn't see them for 6 months, or it was in and out, and then eventually my mom just never showed up. She was a truck driver. She made good money, but she was hooked on pills, and she lived in West Carrollton, not far away, but just had no effort to really come see us. My dad, he was strung out on crack, and he would come and see us, and you could see where he really tried. He lived in a homeless shelter down the road, and he would walk from there, come see us. He would take us back to the homeless shelter. He's living in a homeless shelter. We're living in a house, but he would take us to the shelter so we could eat, you know. And I really respected that, but I was still bitter. And so let me find the point here. So when she put us back into foster care, we were all split up again, and I was pretty mad at my aunt. Like, you know, you put us back into foster care. You've seen the home we just came from. You read the police reports and the records, and she puts us back into foster care. So now I'm mad and bitter towards her. My brother Kurt, he didn't complain much. He moved out in Huber, and they were like rich foster parents. So he never complained. He had a pool, a hot tub. They had a finished basement with arcade games, and I'm living out in Trotwood. You know, this little white boy out in Trotwood, you know, and I'm like, what am I? Like, I was terrified. And but Kurt, he loved it. But my anger really progressed. I had a lot of anxiety, depression. And so I had a bad temper. So when I went to foster homes, I started catching on. I realized, man, if I don't want to be here, if I take these people off, they'll just send me to another home. And if I, like the odds are, maybe I'll get a home like Kurt's. So I would go in there and say, hey, I'm going to drive you crazy until you put in your 30-day notice and send me on to the next one. And so I started bouncing around. And I went to 7 different foster homes. I'm going to try to hurry here. I'll skip up to my freshman year. My freshman year, I got moved in with my brother Kurt at his foster home, at the cool one. So it was like a bittersweet moment. I came home from basketball practice, and they said, hey, Kris, you're moving in with your brother. And I thought, I can't tell my friends bye, and it was a no. I had my bags packed. They were going to send the rest of my stuff. So it was bittersweet because I get to go with my brother. I got to get a swimming pool and a hot tub and arcade games and all that. But there was no MySpace or whatever where I could keep in contact with friends that I had lived there for 2 or 3 years now. So I moved in there, and I wasn't going to screw that foster home up. That one worked out good. I started going to Bethel High School, and I built a good relationship with that foster dad. We went golfing one time, and somebody came up like, oh, hey Gary, how are you? And he's like, oh, I'm good. Who are these? And he said, these are my sons. And that was the first time a foster parent, didn't say, these are my foster kids. And me and Kurt, I remember we looked at each other, and we kind of was like, and Gary just he held his own, and people knew he was older. There's no way these dudes could be his kids. Like, he was 60. We were, I don't know, freshmen. It just wasn't possible. People knew it, but he didn't care. So we had a really good role model there. He worked hard. He was retired at one job, worked at another, and we really learned work ethic from him. He put his family first. And at that point, that's when I started going to the Reinhardt's church. I got saved. I started developing a normal life. We had a routine. On Sundays we got up, we went to church. We went out to eat with the family. I was going to school regularly. It was normal. And then what happened was I started lying to kids at school. I didn't want to say I was a foster kid because people made, kids are cruel. So I remember I told them, yeah, I live with my aunt, my uncle. And at that point, they announced on the speaker through the class, can you send Kris to the office? His foster parents are here to get him. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And there's a kid named Kenny Williams. You guys can Facebook this kid, look him up. He made fun of me for being a foster kid. So we got in a fight, I got expelled from school. And so things started mellowing out, but I still had my anger, and later on, my foster dad, he's carrying Pop down the stairs, and he has a heart attack, and he dies in front of me and Kurt. So I ran to the neighbor who was a sheriff. He came, he did CPR, and he passed away. And then that same day, I'm a freshman in high school. My foster mom has me call her adult children to say that their dad died, and I'm a freshman in high school. And I'm like, I'll just come through the front door, I guess. And I said, hey, your dad had a heart attack and he died. And they're like, Kris, don't play, because I'm pretty sarcastic, but I don't like my sense of humor is not that sick. But yeah, it wasn't that sick. But so I had to do that. That was just that was really devastating for us because we finally got settled in at the foster home. The foster dad passes away. Then the foster mom loses her sister, and then she says, I'm done with foster care. So now I have to find a new home. So I'm probably I think I was a junior in high school. And so I move in with another foster. I'm trying to hurry. I know this is getting late. But either way, I developed where I hated the foster homes I went to. Some were out in the country, some were poor, some the rules were strict, weird, whatever else. And I felt like they all gave up on me. Just when I would act up or whatever, I had to move on. And I just thought, man, my parents didn't want me, my aunt didn't want me, 7 foster homes didn't want me. So I really had some issues I had to deal with. But later on, I realized, I'm not a victim of anything. I started to realize my aunt put me back to foster care because she didn't want me to wind up like her kids. There was a reason behind some of the issues that I couldn't see because I was bitter, I hadn't forgiven people yet, and I started realizing I'm not a victim. I struggled with forgiving my parents. I cut them out. My mom would call here and there and make me feel guilty for not seeing her, so I just said, I'm not talking to her anymore. My mom met my wife. She never met my kids. My dad never met my kids. My mom, one time for Christmas, bought Rachel this pajama set. Oh my gosh. It was a funny pajama set. But, all right, so I'll skip to when I got married. I was around 22, 23 years old. My dad got out of prison. He had just served 10 years in prison for some federal offense. I think he tried to rob someplace or something. But it had been 12 years since I seen him. So I was probably 11 or 12 last time I seen him, and now I'm a grown man, and I get a call. He has cancer, and he's going to pass away. So we had to go see him for the first time since I was a kid. He asked me if I still played high school basketball. I'm like, 23, Dad. Like, that's how much time has passed. And so I was going to read a poem that I wrote for him when he passed, but I'll skip that. But once I forgave my parents, I was able to think clear. I wasn't a victim. I realized I was blessed to have been taken away from my parents. They could have dragged me through the mud with them. They were smart enough. They knew it was best for us to not live with them. And I had an appreciation for that. I realized now that I have kids, how hard would it be to admit to yourself, I'm not good enough to take care of them. I've got to push, So I got rid of the, I would say once I forgave them and the bitterness was gone, I started learning things, But I had to forgive first. And a couple moments that I had throughout all this was I realized if perception's reality, that I'm going to start having to perceive that things didn't happen to me, that they happened for me. I realized in order for God to give me some new things, I had to let go of the things that I was holding on to so I could accept the things He wanted to give me. That was a big part for me. And I knew I was going to be a great dad. I just knew my kids weren't going to have to deal with what I did. And I knew I'd be a great husband for the same reason, because I need to be a good dad to be a good husband as well. There's certain things that I couldn't control, but I can control those things. So I made sure, I can control this. I'm going to be the best that I can be at what I can control. And I always, you always hear that thing, learn from your mistakes. One thing I was good at was learning from other people's mistakes. I learned that when my dad was a bad dad, that taught me something. When my aunt was struggling financially, that taught me something. I'm not going to struggle financially. I'm not going to, it takes a lot of hard work to struggle and scrounge around and to get by. That's a lot of hard work. So I decided, what side of hard work am I going to be on? I'm just going to be on the other side of hard work and not struggle. So those were some of the big things for me. But if you guys can take anything from my quick scrunched up story is, we're not victims of really anything unless that's how you perceive it. Perception is reality. And again, thanks, Brian. And